There is only, as I said before, 6 days to go until the big day, and whoever wins this crucial election will need to work not just with the crossbenches in the House of Representatives, but also the Senate. But what is the Senate going to look like, that unrepresentative swill as they were once called? Joining me to discuss this is Director of Government Relations at Bondi Partners, Phillip Hudson. Phillip, thanks so much for coming on Campaign Confidential tonight. And as I said in my intro here, we keep talking about focusing on who's going to be up, who's going to be down in the House of Reps. But this Senate, we've spoken about this could be a real dog's breakfast for whomever gets up, more likely Labour, but not necessarily.
Yes, good evening, James. I think voters could be forgiven for being surprised when they go to the polling booth and they get given 2 ballot papers and go, what's this other one for? The Senate's been barely mentioned. I mean, quite rightly, there's been a lot of focus on the House of Reps. That's where the government is formed. But as we've seen over so many years, the government to pass legislation for any of these promises, or a great deal of these promises that we've been hearing about during the campaign, they're going to need to go through the Senate. And there's almost no scrutiny on who's running for the Senate, what the numbers are like, what the chances of getting things through the Senate are. And it's been sort of quite amazing because when it comes down to it, the Senate is going to have quite a lot of power. And we know from the sorts of, politicians who've become household names, a lot of them got their start in the Senate. People that you know well, Barnaby Joyce, Bronwyn Bishop, they first made their names in the Senate before moving to the lower house. We have Jackie Lambie and David Pocock and, all sorts of people. And what they think and what they care about and the promises they have made are going to be a big part of what happens after election day for whoever ends up being the government.
So I don't want to necessarily put you on the spot and ask you for a prediction here, but you've got the state of play right now where in the last government, or the last term of Parliament rather, you would see the coalition and the Greens often be able to team up and thwart Labour. If Labour gets up, particularly in a minority government, would the Greens potentially have more of a lever over Anthony Albanese and Labour to come to the table, make a deal? They wouldn't call it a coalition, they'd call it an alliance or something like that because of the votes that they hold in the Senate. And are we not focusing enough on that?
Look, I think anything is possible, and I think that certainly is something that could happen. I think, though, reading Anthony Albanese, he doesn't need to do a deal with the Greens in the lower house. He'll call their bluff and say, I dare you to support Peter Dutton if it comes to that. And Adam Banter's already said that he won't do that. So in the Senate, it'd be situation normal of what is happening now. I mean, we've already got a situation where the Prime Minister in the Parliament that has just been dissolved led a party that had the smallest number of senators in history. Now, the size of the Parliament was changed in 84, but comparatively the smallest number of senators. So he needed to go out and get 14 extra votes every time he wanted to pass something. The Greens had 11 of those votes when the coalition said no. So he's still going to have to deal with that. I think the scenario you paint, that it'd be tempting to say, let's do a deal for both houses. I think the Greens will definitely be pitching that, and I think the Prime Minister will say no, but anything is possible. It really depends on how many numbers he needs and what the case in the lower house is. In the Senate, though, we've got a little bit of an advantage because we already know what half the Senate is going to look like. It's often forgotten that the senators have fixed 6-year terms, unlike the members in the House of Reps that have a 3-year term if they're lucky. So only half the Senate is up at each election, plus the 4 territory senators, because they're thought of as being lesser senators according to the way our structure is. So while there are 40 Senate seats up for grabs, 36 of them are already known. We already know who they're going to be. And, so for example, there's already going to be, coalition's going to start with 14, Labor will start with 12, and the crossbench will be at least 10, including 5 Greens. Now, if the patterns go the way they went last time, the way the lower house polls are suggesting, you're going to get a coalition that could be around 28, 29, 30. Labor could be around 27. The Greens, the best option for them is 11. They could be less. And then you're going to have the crossbench making up 8, 9 or possibly more. So you're still looking at a crossbench in the Senate of around 20, and whichever party wins is going to need to get a whole lot of those crossbenches. Now, for Anthony Albanese, if he retains being Prime Minister, that again is going to mean dealing with the Greens and, depending on how he goes, maybe 1 or 2 other crossbenches, maybe it's just the Greens. But for Peter Dutton, it could be a very precarious situation where the Greens and Labor together can stop him doing anything, and that there's no other pathway for him to get the support of the other senators, even if he got all of them to pass legislation.
Wow.
Now, so that's where it comes down to Senate voting. So that's why I'm surprised the major parties aren't saying vote for us in the Senate as well. I just don't hear that. Maybe they are, but it's surprising that they're not saying that as well.
It's fascinating, Philip, because here in Sydney, I hear Jackie Lambie advertising on the radio, constantly telling people how to fill out their Senate ballots. Going to have to leave it there. Phillip Hudson, thank you for walking us through this fascinating upper house situation that I just don't think people have paid enough attention to. Thank you so much for your time.